So in this video I'm making some farmhouse wooden shelves. Now I'm going to raise the blade and use my AccuMaster to make the saw blade as accurate as possible. I'm taking several adjustment cuts here to ensure that I get the maximum use of the top of the board. So I have to make 6 of these long cuts on the top and bottom for each shelf. Once again, I'm checking the angle of the blade compared to the tabletop, and on this one I've got to move the wings of the fence out in order to make room for the motor to come down. Here I'm just double checking myself to make sure my 45 angle is correct. It turned out to be right on the money. I decided to flip my saw back over and make the other 45 cut from this angle, mostly because I didn't want to put that freshly cut 45 against the fence. It's not super accurate. Here's my dust collection system. It's a shop vac hooked to a cyclone made out of 2 Lowe's buckets. It works okay sometimes. Here I'm starting with the 2x4s. I'm going to make them into like a V, and that will ride in the channel created by the top and bottom 45s. Double checking my measurement here. I want 2 7/8. I think I start out around 3 and take just a little more off. This is the V I was talking about. This is where the other boards slide in. What it's going to do is basically make it appear as though the shelf is one giant piece of wood instead of 2 pieces slapped together. Here's the dry fit. I want to make sure that my angles are actually going to match up and everything is going to look alright. It's kind of tricky when doing this because your boards aren't all perfectly flat. This is the final dimension cut for this top faceboard. So I'm gonna kind of encroach on it slowly and then finally take that line off. Well, now that we found out that that actually fits and everything's working well, I'm going to cut the rest of the 2x4s. When making cuts like this, I try to make sure I turn the saw off just before I relieve that piece that was holding all the weight up. That way the V doesn't rock over into the saw blade and kick back. Now I'm going to square up the braces for my shelf supports, and they're going to be 10 inches long by around 3 inches wide. Now I'm going to mock up the braces real quick. I'm cutting these at a 50-degree angle and a 40-degree angle, and then I'm going to have a round out. The reason I'm making two different angles is because when you add two 10-inch boards together and you're not going to 45 them, you end up with an 8.5-inch board and an 11.5-inch board, which I think looks great on shelf braces and stuff. So that's the reason I made the angles different. If you're wondering why I'm placing an X on pieces of the board, that's just the piece that's going to get cut out. Now over to the bandsaw to make the curve. I want to drop it down as close to the board as possible so that the blade stays as rigid as possible. It's a lot to cut through, so just go really slow. Be especially careful when you're finishing a cut on a bandsaw, especially when it's a pretty big cut like this. You're putting forward pressure, and towards the end of the cut, you could throw your finger into the bandsaw. I'm going to start cleaning up the bandsaw marks with my sander. Just get it nice and smooth, and this is pretty straightforward. I have it clamped in my vise with 2 pieces of leather, so that'll protect the wood. Now that I have the curves done, I'm going to start with the 10-inch braces. So I'm just going to cut 2 for each brace. I'm not going to set up a stop block for this. I'm just going to mark a spot on my chop saw and use it and match them all up, and they should be fine. Normally I wouldn't put metal bracing on a project like this, but in this particular case, the shelves themselves are going to weigh quite a bit, so I don't want to chance this thing falling down. And now I'm going to just finish up the sanding on everything, and I actually install these and I also stain them without actually filming it. So I did take some pictures. Here's the wood stained and apart from each other, of course, and then I'll show you some pictures of it on the wall and what it turned out like. But yeah, here's the finished product. I got it together and then sanded the edges and corners to make it a little more rustic. But that's the project. I hope you enjoy.